Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Luffy ate unknown Mythical Zoan with training from both Shanks and Garp during his childhood part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support the Thejakud for writing that awesome fanfic and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. 11 years before the present. "They're Luffy, good as new," said Makino after finishing stitching together Luffy's face. "Luffy, promise me you won't do something stupid like that again." "Fine, I promise, but I only did it because I wanted to prove to Shanks I'm ready to be a pirate," said Luffy, still showing some pain on his face. "I'm a man, Shanks, I didn't even cry when it happened. I can handle whatever the seas throw at me, and I'm even a great swimmer," Luffy said, trying to puff out his chest. Shanks turned to Luffy with a glass in his hand and said, "Sure Luffy, here, drink some juice." Shanks slid the drink over to Luffy, who grabbed it with both hands. "Thanks, Shanks," Luffy replied, before happily drinking half the glass in a couple seconds. Then the entire bar started to laugh hysterically. "I've never seen a pirate drink juice before, have you guys?" Shanks asked, clearly amused by this boy's antics. Luffy, realizing he had been tricked, started screaming at Shanks and the rest of the pirates in the bar, "Hey, that's unfair, you guys tricked me." Shanks turned to Luffy, still laughing a bit, before his expression turned slightly serious. "Luffy, you aren't ready for life on the sea. You are too weak to even punch straight, and you are too young. What are you, 6 or 7? Even I didn't start pirating until I was 12. Wait and train for a while longer, then follow your dreams." "Fine, I'll wait, but when I arrive in the Grand Line, I will have the best pirate crew in the world. We will be even stronger than you or the Roger Pirates. I will find the One Piece and become the freest man in the world." Luffy screamed with his entire being, inadvertently creating a potent blast of Haki that brought Makino to her knees. Every person in the bar froze, not believing what this child just did. Shanks, seeing that Makino was still on her knees, moved behind the bar and helped her off the floor. Shanks then moved back to his stool beside Luffy, never taking his eyes off him, then downed half the bottle of sake in his hand. A moment later, a large man kicked open the saloon doors, breaking one of the doors off its hinges. A group of mountain bandits then crowded the entrance to the bar. "So, these are the pirates everyone in this worthless village is talking about. Ha, they don't look so tough," the large bandit said while he strolled through the bar to Shanks' side. "Hey, barkeep, why don't you give us 10 barrels of sake and a good time, maybe then we won't burn down the place." Gaining a few laughs from some in the group of bandits behind him. After a second, Makino said, "Sorry, they drank the place dry," motioning to the pirates in the bar. "Huh, so what are they drinking now, water?" Haguma replied, clearly irritated. Makino then calmly answered, "No, that's the last of the booze, just go somewhere else." "Sorry man, didn't realize how much we drank. Here, this bottle hasn't been opened yet, it's yours," Shanks then added, while holding out a full bottle of sake. The bandit grabbed the bottle by the neck, then broke it over the counter, holding the jagged remains of the bottle to Shanks' neck. "I could kill you and your crew right now if I wanted. I'm a big shot on this island. I got an 8 million berry bounty on my head. That would be thirsty work though. I suggest you pirates leave before we get back, or there will be trouble," he said, before leaving the bar and taking the group of bandits with him. After about 30 seconds, the entire bar erupted in laughter, while Shanks cleaned the broken glass from the floor and counter. Lucky Roo looked like he was about to die, he was laughing so hard. With tears in his eyes, he over to Shanks and in between laughs he said, "Oh Captain, he got you good, I bet you're shaking in your boots." Luffy couldn't take it anymore. He just watched that bandit disrespect his hero and walk away from it like nothing happened. Luffy couldn't process it, so he exploded on Shanks. "Why the hell do you think that's funny? He just threatened you and your crew, and you do nothing about it." Shanks looked genuinely surprised at his outburst for a moment, but understood Luffy's anger. "Luffy, not every problem should be solved by conflict. If there is a peaceful alternative, it should be explored." Shanks then put a hand on Luffy's shoulders and finished, "Do you understand the meaning behind what I'm saying?" Then Beckman added, "He's right Luffy, besides if we got into a fight, it would put a damper our fun." Shanks then yelled, "Another round," which got cheers from his entire crew. Calming down a bit, Luffy didn't completely understand, but as he looked around the bar, Luffy saw a small chest on the counter in between him and Shanks. Curious as a child can be, he decided to open it just to see the treasure. When Luffy looked inside the chest, he expected to see diamonds, emeralds and other rare and valuable gems, but instead found a strange white apple with flame-like orange accents and a curly blood-red stem. Although it was unlike any apple he had seen in his life, Luffy unconsciously reached for the apple and took it out of the chest. As Luffy picked up the apple, he became enamored by the texture and color. He could feel the apple was pulsating with something powerful. Luffy looked at Shanks, whom was busy polishing off his bottle of sake to notice, and decided to eat the thing. After a couple minutes, Shanks noticed Luffy has been incredibly quiet, which was strange especially for Luffy. Looking over at the boy, he noticed the open chest and Luffy eating something. Shanks acted as fast as he could, but when he got to Luffy, it was already too late, the entirety of the fruit was eaten. Shanks, already got the attention of everyone in the bar, held Luffy up by his ears and started shaking him. "Luffy, you dumbass. That was a devil fruit." Luffy, with a confused look asked, "A devil fruit? What's that? I thought that was just a terrible tasting apple." Shanks still shouting, "Luffy, we don't even know what that fruit is, it could be as useless as the Jake no mi for all we know." "The Jake no mi?" A moment later, 2 white wings sprouted from Luffy's back and a flaming halo appeared over his head, surprising everyone in the bar. Seeing as it wasn't a totally useless fruit, Shanks let a heavy sigh of relief go and let Luffy down. He quickly recovered and said, "Luffy, a devil fruit is one of the rarest treasures of the sea, but the price you now pay for having those powers is that you will never be able to swim again. So I'll have these wings the rest of my life. But how will I wear shirts?" Luffy asked, clearly not understanding the big picture. "Don't worry Luffy, this seems to be a Zoan of some type. Though I've never heard of or seen a Zoan like this before. You might have gotten incredibly lucky and ate a Mythical Zoan, the rarest devil fruit in the world. Hell, even I only know of 3 other Mythical Zoan users in the entire world." "Well, only 3 other people in the world, do they have the same power?" Luffy asked. "No Luffy, just like every other devil fruit in the world, you are the only person to have this power or specific fruit. Luffy, follow me, let's see what else you can do." "Lucky, Yasop, Ben, let's see what this legendary fruit can do." 3 months later. "Alright, Luffy, no more using your holy fire in forests. That was the second fire in 2 months, it took us forever to get control of the last one. So let's not make the same mistakes again. We don't want to lose the entire forest, do we?" "Okay, but I already know change at will and how to fly, then I just need to work on control for my fire and different techniques." "Shanks, I've been meaning to ask, can you teach me how to use a sword? Yours looks so cool. If it will keep your mind off burning down forests, then sure. I'll even teach you my sword style, which I learned from the Pirate King, Gold Roger himself." "You knew Gold Roger himself?" Shanks knew the Pirate King. "Wait, how did you know him? Were you on his crew?" Luffy asked with stars in his eyes. "I was, until a couple years before his death. He's also the one who gave me this straw hat. That's why I have never let you touch it. It's my most prized possession." The stars in Luffy's eyes lasted until he passed out later that night from exhaustion, only after hearing countless stories about Gold D. Roger's adventures and his greatest battles, many of them against the legendary marine monkey D. Garp. That night on Shanks' ship. "Hey Ben, I need you to do something for me," Shanks said with hints of exhaustion in his voice. "Alright Captain, what do you need?" "I need you to teach Luffy about navigation, both outside and inside the Grand Line, at least to a basic level. We don't want him to die just drifting in the seas, do we?" "No we don't, I'll talk to him tomorrow after his training and see what I can do." "Thanks, I think this kid has the potential to be a better pirate than myself or even Roger. I'm actually excited to see what he can do when he's unleashed on the world." Ben looked out onto the sea with a faraway gaze and replied, "He will flip the world upside down." 6 months later. "I'm impressed Luffy, not only is your technique nearly flawless, but you are even starting to improve and personalize the style to suit your strengths and maximize your weaknesses. You even incorporated the use of your devil fruit, which is a nice touch. The only way you can get better now is to get stronger and experience more fights," Shanks stated, with an ounce of pride in his voice. "Well, I have a great teacher, so it's pretty easy to learn. Now that I've got swords down pretty well, can you teach me about Haki? I've been wanting to learn it since you told me about the different types months ago." "Well, my crew will be leaving for the Grand Line soon, so I could only teach and train you the basics within these next few months. Which are you most interested in?" Luffy thought for a moment before his eyes widened and he answered, "I think Conquerors is the most baddest, but I think Observation would be most useful. If I can get to a level where I can predict the future, I'll be unbeatable." Shanks rubbed his head at the thought. "Predicting the future, damn it Luffy, that takes years of training. We don't have that long, but if you want I could teach you both armament and observation to a basic level." "Armament and observation, alright, if you think that's the best course of action I'll do it," nodding his head as he finished. "Great, we will start training tomorrow, so get some sleep, it's going to be a very long day." 10 years before present. Shanks stood before Luffy one last time and looked him in the eyes before saying, "Goodbye Luffy, you have learned what I could teach during this short time, and you have come a very long way. Remember to continue to train you Haki, and when Garp comes back to ask him about the other types of Haki, he will teach you more. Goodbye Shanks, and just so you know, deep breath, I will be the Pirate King." Luffy screamed at the top of his lungs and unintentionally let loose a stream of Conqueror's Haki that probably reached the nobles of Goa Kingdom. Shanks took one last long look at the child whom he gave his arm for. The child who he taught mostly everything he knew other than what lies in the Grand Line. Luffy hates spoilers, it was during these final moments that Shanks decided. Luffy, I want you to promise me the next time we meet, you will be a great pirate. I won't just be a great pirate, Shanks, I'll be the freest man in the world with the best crew who all strive for greatness. My crew will be the second crew ever to reach the end of the Grand Line, and we will do it in record time. Luffy replied, with his face full of determination. This caused Shanks and every pirate on his ship to smirk. Everything was ready to go, there was only one last thing he needed to do. Alright Luffy, then it's a promise, here give it back to me when you accomplish your dream. Shanks pushed the straw hat, his most prized possession, onto Luffy's head. Luffy told himself he wouldn't cry when Shanks left, but the faith Shanks put into Luffy was too much. He couldn't stop the tears, no matter how hard he tried. 2 months later, I can't believe you want to be a pirate, Luffy. This is all Red Hair's fault, if he hadn't corrupted you, you would be the perfect marine. Garp declared while walking down a dirt path in the mountains. Don't talk bad about Shanks, Gramps, he saved my life. Not only that, but he helped me learn to use my devil fruit and Haki. Garp looked down at grandson beside him with wide eyes. He then grabbed his ears, picking him up off the ground, and yelled, he taught you Haki, how proficient are you? What forms can you use? As Luffy struggled in his grip, he answered, Shanks taught me about all 3 forms, but he only taught me a little bit of armament and observation. Garp dropped him hearing that and let out a silent sigh of relief. Luffy then continued, that reminds me, Gramps, can you help me get stronger? I want to be the strongest pirate king ever. Garp smacked Luffy on the back of the head, nearly knocking off his straw hat, before asking, why would I help a kid become a pirate, Luffy? That would only bite me in the ass later in life. Well, I'm not just some kid, I'm your grandson. I also thought if you had to have a pirate in the family, he might as well be the strongest pirate king ever, don't you agree? Wahaha, you want to be even stronger than Gold Roger himself. Fine Luffy, you will need all the help you can get. Hearing this, Luffy jumped up and down with joy, before replying, really? Thanks you, Gramps, I promise to be even stronger than the Pirate King. So Luffy, I heard from the mayor in Fuchsia village that your devil fruit is quite destructive. What type is it? The question stopped Luffy's jumping and made him catch up to Garp. He then answered, Shanks told me a Mythical Zoan, the rarest devil fruit in the world. He called it the Tenchi Tenchi no Mi. He also taught me how to use a sword in his own personal style. Luffy finished enthusiastically as he continued to follow Garp through the forest. Garp had a small smile and scratched his beard as he stated, a Mythical Zoan, huh, alright, I can work with that. Tomorrow we will start training, we will work on your Haki, and I'll also teach you some techniques that I think you will enjoy. Thanks, Gramps, with your help finding the One Piece shouldn't be a problem. 8 months later, on the edge of Dawn Island, 2 boys sat on a cliff overlooking the East Blue. Although it is a beautiful day in the weakest sea in the world, it's also a dark day for these 2 brothers, as they are suffering from the loss of their best friend and brother. Someone who changed both of their lives forever, taken away before his time by a so-called god of the world government. Ace looked over to Luffy and declared, Luffy, quit crying, our brother might be gone, but I promise I'll never die. You hear me, Luffy? Sabo might not have been able to experience freedom, but that only means we will have to make up for him. We have to live our lives without regret and live as free as possible, no matter who hates or tries to stop us. A sniffling Luffy replied, still holding back tears from his bloodshot eyes. I want to get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until I'm so strong, I won't lose anyone else again. Luffy announced, eyes still watery but with a newfound determination. That's right, Luffy, I'll be leaving in 7 years, but before that, we both need to get stronger. So we can both be free and follow our dreams, without anyone stopping us. Ace said, before pulling Luffy back into the forest. 10 years later, I'm so hungry. If only I kept the Lord of the Coast when I punched him. I'd have some meat. Luffy said as his stomach roared. Luffy had been drifting for 3 days, and although he knew how to navigate, he forgot to ask what direction the closest island was to Dawn Island. Cursing himself for his short-sightedness, Luffy slumped over the side of his dinghy, hoping to see anything to catch and eat. After a couple of hours, which seemed like an eternity, Luffy smelled something delicious on the air. Seeing as he had not seen a single fish, Luffy deciding to abandon his dinghy. He picked up his pipe that Sabo gave him and used Moonwalk to follow the smell to its source. After another 30 minutes or so, Luffy could see 2 ships on the horizon. Quickening his pace, Luffy finally reached the liner, where the delectable aroma originated from. Confused as to why the liner was abandoned, Luffy focused his observation, only to notice that only pirates remain. Every civilian was fleeing the ship in fear of their life. Not one to pass up a golden opportunity for free food, Luffy rushed to the ballroom of the ship. Only to find a band of pirates stealing his food. Hey assholes, that's my food. If you take a single piece of meat from this ship, I will beat the shit out of all of you. Luffy announced as he walked towards the pirates. He doesn't look like one of the civilians. One of the pirates said. Might as well rob him too. Another one added with a smile on his face. If you think you can stop us, you're even dumber than you look. The pirate said, looking back at his friends and pulling out their swords. Shave, Luffy whispered and appeared in front of the door the pirates were about to use. When the pirates looked back at Luffy, they realized he had vanished from sight. Thinking they had scared the kid off, they picked up the goods and started walking towards the door. I thought I told you not to take a single piece of food from this ship, Luffy declared darkly as his straw hat hit his eyes. Faster than the eye could recognize, all the pirates in the room were unconscious, foaming at the mouth, and dropping all the goods and gold they were carrying. Well, I might as well take out the rest of them. I don't want any interruptions during my meal. Luffy said with a smile on his face while pushing open both doors on the port side, where the pirate ship was docked. Only to see a Jolly Roger with a sideways skull and a heart. When Luffy jumped onto the deck of the pirate ship, he immediately noticed there were no pirates on the deck. Deciding to see how many people he would have to deal with, Luffy focused his observation Haki on both the ocean liner and the pirate ship. Seeing as there were only about 30 auras in total and all of them being below the deck, other than the ones he knocked out, Luffy decided to find the largest aura, assuming to be the captain of the ship. Once below deck, Luffy knocked out 2 unsuspecting guards with a swing of his pipe to back to their heads. Continuing down the hallway towards the sizable aura, he was led to a storage room. In this room, Luffy found someone he wasn't expecting, a small pudgy pink-haired kid. Hey kid, what's your name? Luffy asked the boy. What are you doing here? This is a pirate ship, you know. If they find you, they will kill you, or worse, make you into a cabin boy. The kid replied, obviously terrified of the pirates on this ship. I know this is a pirate ship, but you didn't answer my question. What's your name? What? Oh, my name is Kobe. I'm a cabin boy on this ship. He said while sheepishly rubbing the back of his head. What's your name? Kobe asked a strange guy with a straw hat. Me? I am Monkey D. Luffy, future pirate king. Nice to meet ya. Luffy answered with a large grin. The pirate king. You want to be the pirate king? No way, that's not possible. You will be killed before you even make it to the Grand Line. Ouch. Why did you hit me? Kobe asked while rubbing the sizable lump on his head. I hit you because you said I couldn't accomplish my dream. I decided to be the pirate king and it doesn't matter if I die on my journey. As long as I die fighting to become the pirate king, I'll be happy. Luffy declared with a smile on his face. Stunned by this man's resolve, Kobe began to think, if he believes he can make his dream a reality, is mine possible as well? Kobe then turned to Luffy and asked, Luffy, do you think my dream is possible also? It's not as grandiose as yours, but most would say it's just as crazy. How should I know? What's your dream? Luffy asked while munching on an apple he found in a crate. I want to become a Navy admiral. It's been my dream ever since childhood. Do you think it's possible? Unknown to Kobe, this caused his aura to grow and fluctuate in strength. Luffy, seeing this kid had the potential to do anything he wanted in this world, he decided to give him the fire to accomplish his dream. Anything is possible in this world, Kobe. As long as you are dedicated to your dream, then it can be accomplished. Just remember your only limitation is yourself. But, we will be enemies. We will have to fight each other. Kobe said, disappointed by this realization. Kobe, do you hate me? No, I don't hate you. Are we friends? Yes, we are friends. Then you have nothing to worry about, we will always be friends, as long as you remember your dream and this day. Even if we are on opposite sides of the law. Luffy replied with a smile. So this is the man who took out some of my crew. Kobe, why are you talking to him? Shouldn't you always be with me? At the sound of this person's voice, Kobe started to cower in fear. When Luffy turned around, he laid his eyes on the fattest person he'd ever seen. Even bigger than Lucru and Dayton, which is saying a lot. Who are you? A bewildered Luffy asked while staring at the massive person. Boys, who's the beautiful woman in the All of the Seas? The behemoth of a woman, asked the men behind her. You, Alvida-sama. Every man behind her said obediently, while Kobe was cowering still in fear. You're a woman, a baffled Luffy then looked to Kobe. Kobe, are you alright? Kobe, didn't you hear me? Who is the beautiful woman on the All of the Seas? Alvida screamed at the boy and looked at him expectantly. Only now had Kobe picked his head up from the floor. He first looked at Alvida, then to Luffy, and had another realization. If I want to be a marine, much less an admiral, I can't cower to pirates. I must stand up for myself because no one else will. Kobe stood up and with his knees still shaking, he screamed, Alvida is the biggest and ugliest whale in the entire East Blue. Shushi, Luffy laughed while pointing at Alvida. Why, you little brat? Alvida said, putting her mace on her shoulder. So, you finally decided to grow a pair. I guess it's time to get rid of you. Just as Alvida turned to Kobe, Luffy appeared in front of him. While looking at Kobe, Luffy patted his shoulder. That was hilarious, Kobe. Let me take it from here. Luffy said while turning around to deal with the mace falling straight towards his head. Moving his body out of the way of the overhead swing, he watched as the mace hit Alvida's shin and hearing a distinct crack of bones. Watching her jump up and down from the self-inflicted injury, Luffy could swear the whole ship was bouncing along with her. Quickly getting bored of this, Luffy decided to finish the rest of the pirates in a single blow. As Alvida was hobbling towards the doorway, Luffy punched her in the back with some of his strength, only to send her and her crew twinkling away in the sky. Kobe looked at the hole in disbelief before tarring his eyes away into Luffy. "I can't believe you beat them all with a single punch." Kobe turned back to the large hole in the ship where the woman who had terrorized his life for the last 3 years was just jettisoned somewhere into the sky. "Now that that's over, Kobe, do you know where that whale kept her navigation equipment, maps, compass, anything?" "Yes, she kept her logbook and maps in her quarters." "Great, can you get it for me? I'm going to get food for our voyage to the next island." "Yes, Luffy-sama, I'll get it right away." Kobe then tried to hurry out the door, only to be stopped by Luffy with another hand on his shoulder. "Kobe." Luffy gave him a glare. "I'm not holding you hostage, remember we are friends," Luffy finished with a smile. "I also don't think the Marines would recruit a kid that they found on a pirate ship, do you?" "No, you're right." "Okay, I'll be right back with the map and compass." "Great, I'll go get the food from the liner and we will be on our way." Luffy replied, already salivating at the thought of food. It took Luffy 20 minutes to get to the dingy, and not because of the massive bag of food he was carrying on his shoulder. But because he found a meat pyramid that looked to be glistening with gold and he just couldn't help himself. Although, when he got to the dingy, Kobe had already circled the closest island on the map and knew which direction to go. Lowering the dingy into the blue, Luffy hopped in and they were on their way. After a while, Kobe got bored, which wasn't surprising considering there isn't much to do on the open seas, so he decided to make small talk. "Luffy, how are you going to be the Pirate King without a crew?" "Shishi, of course I don't have a crew yet, I just started my journey, but I hope to find my first nakama soon, maybe on the next island." After a few minutes, Luffy asked, "So Kobe, what is the island we're heading to?" According to this map, the closest island is called Yotsuba Island, and it is about 2 days from where Alvida attacked that sea liner. "Well then, I'm glad I got this much food. Otherwise, I would starve," Luffy said with a grin on his face. "Luffy, you need to be careful on this next island." "Why is that?" Luffy asked while already eating a piece of meat from the massive sack of food. "Well, I heard the best swordsman in the East Blue made it his base. I also heard that he's a bounty hunter. Alvida was terrified he would come after her bounty soon." "Well, it's good I don't have a bounty then, right?" Luffy replied with a smile. "By the way, what is this swordsman's name?" "Urano is Oro, from what the pirate said, he is a demon who wields 3 swords at once." Luffy looked into the distance, with stars in his eyes. 3 swords. That's so cool. "No, it isn't, Luffy. He might kill you when he learns you're a pirate. You can't talk to high ouch." "Why did you hit me?" Kobe asked, now sporting 2 large lumps on his head. "Because," Luffy said matter-of-factly. Due to Luffy's incredible appetite, the massive sack of food only lasted a day and a half, much to Kobe's surprise. Finally, on the second day, Luffy and Kobe made it to Shell's town, in the Yotsuba Islands. "Kobe, let's go get some lunch at a bar. I'm starving," Luffy said as his stomach growled so loud it scared a few of the townspeople close by. "How can you eat so much?" Kobe questioned under his breath. Ignoring his question in favor of finding food, Luffy hurried to the only bar in town. Hoping to not only find food but this famous swordsman as well. When Luffy and Kobe entered the bar, Luffy immediately found a stool at the bar and ordered 10 plates of meat and a bottle of sake. Kobe took the stool next to Luffy and started eyeing one of his plates of meat, which Luffy noticed and simply slid over a plate for him to eat. Luffy finished his 9 plates in the time it took Kobe to eat his, and when he finished, he looked around the bar for this 3-sword swordsman. Not seeing the man he wanted to meet, he asked the lady behind the counter, "Hey barkeep, I heard there was a famous bounty hunter on this island, named Urano Zoro." The second the swordsman's name left his mouth, every patron in the bar recoiled in fear. Which confused Luffy greatly. The little girl then came from behind the counter and sat right next to Luffy and said, "Zoro was arrested for killing the pet wolf of Captain Morgan's son, Helmeppo. Helmeppo released the wolf on the town and it attacked our bar and me because I had a plate of food in my hands, so he killed it to save my life. Helmeppo arrested him and then made a bet with him." "Which was?" Luffy asked while taking a few pulls from his bottle of sake. If Zoro could survive this entire month without eating any food, all charges would be dropped. "But I overheard Helmeppo bragging to some marines, saying he would kill him after the 30 days was up anyway. I wish I could save him, but every time I've told him, he doesn't believe me." "How long has it been since?" "He's been starving for 23 days. The girl said with tears in her eyes. "Where is he being held?" Kobe asked the girl. "In the courtyard of the base, but if you are going to see him, can you bring him these rice balls?" I worked really hard on them and was going to bring them today anyway. Alright, I'll go. Kobe, you can stay here if you want. I'll probably start some trouble, so just a warning. Luffy said, taking the 3 balls of rice and started heading towards the door. I'm coming too. Kobe said, rushing to follow Luffy out of the establishment. I thought you didn't want to be a pirate, Kobe. What's with the sudden change of heart? Luffy asked the pink-haired boy. I just want to see the man that kept Alvida up at night. Luffy recognized a lie but didn't call him out on it. This might be good for him to see a marine captain who is mad with power and extremely corrupt. Alright, but stay back, I don't want you to get caught up in the fray. Luffy said, looking down at Kobe, only to see his head down in contemplation. Luffy, can I ask you a question? You don't need my permission, Kobe. What's up? I thought the Marines were supposed to be the good guys, but the people in this town, they are so afraid of the Marines who protect them. How could someone who follows justice become so corrupt? Kobe asked, with his eyes still on the path ahead of them. Kobe, you have to remember Marines are people too. There are good ones and bad ones, just like there are good and bad pirates or even good and bad parents. Luffy answered while thinking about Dayton. The two walked in silence for a while before coming up on a large gated compound. Walking around the perimeter, they found a broken part of the wall, which looked to have been broken by cannon fire. Looking through the sizable hole, a man was tied to a cross. He had a green bandana covering the top of his head and his eyes were shadowed. Kobe looked in awe and fear of the man, who was said to have been starving for the last 23 days, but looked as though he fight an entire pirate crew. Kobe looked over to where he thought Luffy was, only to see nothing but air beside him. Looking back to the swordsman, there was Luffy standing right in front of the pirate hunter. Hey, you hungry? I got some rice balls for you to eat. Luffy asked to the starving swordsman in front of him. The man lifted his head and opened an eye to look at Luffy and said, get lost, pole guy, I don't need any food. Oh yeah? Then I'll eat it myself. Luffy said while bringing one of the rice balls slowly and agonizingly closer to his mouth. When Zoro finally smelled the fresh rice balls, even Kobe could hear his stomach growl in desperate need. Fine, give them to me. Here, Luffy said, putting the rice balls, one at a time, in Zoro's mouth. Why is there sugar on these rice balls? I thought you were supposed to use salt, Zoro asked, still chewing the last ball. Shush, I didn't make them. A little girl at the bar in town did. You will have to ask her. Alright, thanks for the food, now get the hell out of here, pipe guy. I only have 7 days left before I win this bet. Zoro finished with a determined look on his face, but only then did Zoro notice the bottle of sake in his right hand. Noticing the swordsman eyeing his sake, Luffy asked, do you want a couple pulls before I go? Shaking the bottle and the sake inside. Zoro looked towards the gate, then back toward Luffy, and nodded his head. Putting the bottle to his mouth and slowly tilting, Luffy decided to tell him Homepo's plan. Zoro about this bet. Zoro took a couple mouthfuls from the bottle, then after a couple seconds he asked, what about it? I overheard some guards on the way out of town, they said that you are going to be executed even if you win this bet. Hearing this caused Zoro's eyes to widen. That little piece of shit, when I get my hands on him, I'm going to tear him a new asshole. Zoro stated, seething with anger. Luffy could see the crazy amount of bloodlust that was radiating off of this man. It reminded him of the tiger in the jungles of Dawn Island. I can free you, but you only have to do one thing for me. Ah, I expected a catch, so what do you want? Zoro asked with a smirk. I want you to join my pirate crew. Luffy declared, sporting a large grin before taking a pull of sake himself. Zoro's face faltered a bit. Join your crew, huh? And is that pink-haired kid also in your crew? Zoro asked, looking behind Luffy at Kobe. Luffy turning to see Kobe, clearly sticking his head out in full view of the compound. Nah, he isn't, he just wanted to see a corrupt marine. But, you would be my first mate and vice captain. The only thing I'd ever make you do is to follow your dream, no matter how crazy it is. Luffy stated with a wide grin. Vice captain, huh? What would stop me from just turning you in after you free me? Other than the fact that I don't have a bounty yet, I always heard swordsmen have a code of honor, or is that just lie? It's true, fine, I'll join your crew, but if you ever show weakness, I'll kill you myself. Zoro said, grinning wildly. Go get my swords, then I'll be able to cut these ropes. Great. But before I go, I have one last thing to ask you. What is your dream? My dream has always been to be the world's greatest swordsman. Crazy, right? Zoro asked with a sly grin. Shishi, the king of pirates would require nothing less, Luffy answered before vanishing from sight. Zoro's eyes widened before closing with a smile. The king of pirates, huh? Maybe I'm not so crazy after all. Luffy reappeared beside Kobe. Kobe, Marines are coming this way, stay out of sight and don't make a sound, alright? Luffy ordered. Alright, I'll watch from here, Kobe replied, looking slightly scared. Great, I'll be back soon, Luffy said before moonwalking towards the top of the marine base, baffling Kobe at this seemingly impossible feat. Just as Luffy said, 2 Marines and a teen with a terrible haircut showed up less than a minute later. Kobe couldn't hear every word the teen said, but by his body language, he was gloating to the swordsman. After a small conversation and the swordsman obviously angering the teen, then Helmeppo ordered the guards to beat the swordsman for his words. This beating went on for what seemed like minutes before Helmeppo finally told the Marines to stop. The beaten and bloody swordsman spit a wad of blood in Helmeppo's face, causing him to nearly throw up in disgust when the red liquid splattered on his face and expensive clothing. "Now, I need to change my wardrobe, peasant. Guards, follow me to my quarters. Daddy should be finished with the ceremony soon, then he'll deal with you," Helmeppo announced with disgust towards Zoro. Helmeppo and the guards quickly left the compound and went towards the entrance to the base. In a few seconds, Luffy reached the top of the Marine base. He was greeted by the sight of 100 or so Marines trying to erect a large statue of a man. Some of the Marines noticed the flying man in the straw hat and dropped the rope connected to the statue in shock and disbelief. Without every Marine pulling with all their might, the statue fell, breaking in half and crushing a third of the Marines on the roof under its weight. Seeing as he has already caused some chaos, Luffy dropped to the front of the base and focused his observation on the floors below the roof. He quickly noticed 3 auras on the 2nd floor and a familiar aura on the 6th floor. Luffy quickly climbed the stairs and headed towards the 3 auras. He then rounded a corner only to quickly step back into the shadows because the 3 auras, a kid and 2 Marines, left a room and were heading his way. Luffy overheard the kid talk about how nice the trophies in his room are, which immediately got Luffy's attention. The 3 walked past him without even a glance in his direction. Going to the door those 3 just left, Luffy kicked it open and quickly scanned the room. His eyes then spotted the 3 katana, a beautiful white katana, which looked to be extremely valuable, and 2 average-looking blades underneath it. Taking all 3 swords, Luffy decided to just break through the window overlooking the compound for a quicker escape. When Luffy landed in the compound, he heard the distinct sound of a siren, alarming every remaining Marine to the presence of intruders. Luffy quickly used Shave to get to Zoro as fast as possible. Luffy appeared in front of Zoro much to the latter's surprise and cleanly cut the ropes restraining the man. Once Zoro got his bearings and got to his feet, Luffy gave him his katana. Looking back at the Marines now flooding the compound, Luffy turned back to Zoro and said, "Zoro, it's time to see what you can do. I only have one order, if he's a corrupt Marine, he's a dead one." "Got it." Zoro gave him a wicked smile while radiating bloodlust and replied, "Got it, Captain. Oh Zoro, one last thing." Saying this stopped Zoro in his tracks and he looked back to Luffy. "What is it?" "My name is Luffy, shishi, now let's have some fun," Luffy said looking at the Marines who had surrounded them and were aiming their rifles. Right after that Luffy grabbed his pipe from its place on his back and disappeared. When Luffy reappeared with his pipe dripping with blood, he turned to see the bloody and broken bodies of Marines left in his wake. Looking to see the damage Zoro has caused, Luffy saw him cut down the last Marine in his path before facing the strongest Marine in the base, Captain Morgan. Deciding this would be fun to watch, Luffy concentrated his observation on the auras of the cannon fodder around the compound and used a small blast of Conqueror's Haki to knock them out. Captain Morgan was furious. Not only was his statue destroyed because of a flying man with a straw hat, every Marine in the base was now either dead or out cold. "All of you are worthless and pathetic. If any of you are still conscious, I order you to slit your throats." Morgan screamed at his Marines, but not getting any responses. Morgan looked at the man, no demon in front of him, and could only see one red eye from under his bandana. Morgan finally understood the situation he was in, and even Kobe could smell the piss in his pants. Seeing as they were all alone, Zoro let his bloodlust rage. It being the largest Luffy had seen, he actually got excited. Although he knew Zoro would win, this would be a good test to see how strong Zoro really was. After a few seconds of silence, Zoro mumbled onigiri and moved faster than the eye could blink. He was right on the hulking Marine, and with 3 slashes the Marine fell, showering the ground in blood. After 3 seconds, his axe landed right beside his head, lodged in the ground. Luffy walked over to the Marine captain and flipped him over. He wanted to see where he was cut and how deep, but something caught his eye. Luffy looked towards the Marine base and saw a long and deep gash, which wasn't there before the attack. He then looked at the wall of the courtyard and saw a similar gash. Looking back down at the Marine captain, the man was already dead, his neck and having been cleaved completely through. The Marine's arms were cut off as well. Luffy then walked to where Zoro and Kobe were waiting for him, outside the compound, and Zoro said with a satisfied grin, "So, where to next, Captain?" "Dear Luffy, you left your bottle of sake," Kobe said, giving Luffy his remaining third of a bottle. "Ah, thank you, Kobe. I completely forgot," Luffy replied before taking a small pull and adding, "but I think Zoro deserves it more, don't you?" Putting the sake bottle in front of Zoro as they walked into town. "What do you mean?" asked Kobe before giving him a once-over and noticing the bullet wound on his arm. Zoro, you have a bullet in your arm. You have to go to a doctor fast. Don't worry Kobe, I'll be fine for now. It's not my first bullet after all. Zoro stated, shrugging his right arm and taking the offered sake from Luffy, chugging a good amount himself. So, where to now? Zoro asked as they were nearing the coast. We are heading back to the bar to get you some food, other than rice. Then we need to get some supplies so we can make it to the next island. Luffy answered before turning to Kobe. Kobe, we'll need to part ways on this island. I assume Zoro and I will be considered criminals by the time those marines wake up. Okay, that's fine. I guess I never thanked you for saving me on that pirate ship. So thanks Luffy, I thought I would die on that ship. Kobe replied while looking at Luffy with respect and appreciation. Zoro looked at Luffy and asked, that reminds me, Luffy, when we were fighting those marines, you disappeared and most were beaten, and the others just passed out. How did you knock out those marines? You didn't even move and they all dropped like flies. That was something called Hashoku Haki, or some know it as Conqueror's Haki. It is a manifestation of willpower in the form of intimidation. I'll tell you more about it when we leave this island. You were able to knock out trained marines just by intimidating them. That's impressive. How many people can you intimidate at once? Kobe asked just before they entered the bar. I don't know exactly. I've never found the limit to the power. But if I had to put a number on it, I would say easily more than 100,000 people, about the same strength of those marines Zoro and I just fought. I assume it also depends on how well I can use the other forms of Haki. Luffy answered before sitting at a table in the back of the bar. If you can use it on that many people, calling it Conqueror's Haki is self-explanatory. But I'd assume it's rare, otherwise, the average person could overthrow a nation pretty easily. Zoro stated, looking towards the bar, before seeing the little girl who made the rice balls rushing over. You are correct Zoro, and if I remember correctly, that specific form of Haki is only attainable for those with the qualities of a king, otherwise only one in around 5 million can use it. Zoro. Oh no, you're injured, come on, I'll get mama to stitch you up. The little girl said with a smile, before leading Zoro to the back of the bar. Luffy, you said before we entered the bar, something about other forms of Haki, how many are there? Kobe asked Luffy. There are 3 forms in total: presence, fighting spirit and intimidation. Kenban Shoku, Yuzashoku, Hashoku or observation, armament, and conquerors. The first 2 are accessible to every living thing in the world, although most don't awaken it in life. If they do, it is just before death. So, I can learn these techniques too? Kobe inquired in disbelief. Yes, you can, and will, especially if you want to be a Navy admiral. Luffy replied to Kobe, whose face lifted considerably at the thought. How do I learn these techniques? Strenuous training and disciplining the mind. One must be acutely aware of his surroundings, but that is only for armament and observation. Conqueror's Haki can't be attained by training, it just happens naturally. Though it can be strengthened by training. Luffy stated before seeing Zoro emerge from the back of the bar with a bandage on his right arm. They fix you up? Luffy asked Zoro as he walked back. Yeah, but I had to dig the bullet out myself. Zoro replied before sitting back down at the table. What were you two talking about? I just told him the basics of Haki. I'll tell you the details when we leave the island, Luffy said before waving over the little girl and pulling out his remaining 50,000 berries. I need whatever Zoro wants to eat and as much food as we can get with this, Luffy said and handed the girl the sack of gold. The look on the child's face was pure elation at the amount of berries in her hands. Luffy, are you sure you should spend all your berries on food here? You might need some later. Kobe asked. Nah, I'm sure we'll be fine. I just hope it's enough food to last us until we reach the next island. Luffy, what is the next island we are going to? Zoro asked as plates of Sea King meat and greens found its way in front of him. Luffy pulled out a map of the surrounding islands. Let me check. We are going to the Organ Islands, but the only marked location on this map is Orange Town. So we'll head there. Just as I thought. Luffy, I heard a pirate crew took over the town a few months back. Their captain has the second largest bounty in the East Blue, with a 15 million berry bounty. Zoro stated before digging into the full course meal in front of him. 15 million. Alvida only had a 5 million berry bounty. That guy must be a monster. Kobe replied, imagining what this criminal could be like. Seeing Kobe's reaction, Luffy turned to Zoro and asked, what's his name? Nearly finished with his first plate, Zoro slowed down and cleared his throat with some sake. Ah, that hit the spot. The pirate's name is Buggy the Clown. I heard he was a Grand Line pirate long ago, but settled here. Buggy, I swear I've heard that name before. Doesn't matter, we are heading there anyway. Luffy declared with a grin. An hour went by, Luffy and Zoro left the bar and were on their way. Zoro with a few bottles of sake in each hand and Luffy with a giant sack of food on his shoulder. When they reached the dingy, Zoro laughed for a good minute before trailing off. I shouldn't have expected anything else. Don't worry, it's not permanent. We will find something better soon. Luffy said as he pushed the Murd Dingy into the sea. It would take around 3 days before they would reach the island, and that's with the right winds and catching currents. Zoro, we will switch off on paddling every so often, but you start first. I need to get us going in the right direction. Luffy said as he was looking back and forth between the map and compass. After a good hour of rowing, Zoro felt the wind pick up. While putting down the sails he asked, "So Luffy, what else about this Haki did you want to tell me about?" Well, there are 3 known types of Haki. Observation or Kenbun Shoku is when you discipline your mind and are extremely attuned to the environment around you. It lets someone sense emotions and accurately predict someone's movements before they can even put the thought into action. Those who practice this form for years can even predict the immediate future. That sounds incredible, what about the others? Next is Armament or Busa Shoku. This lets the user create an invisible armor around the body, which can even be applied to weapons. Observe. Luffy then pulled his pipe off his back and held it in front of him. The gray steel became covered by a purplish-black reflective paint. This is Armament Haki, and when applied to weapons, it makes it nearly unbreakable and can even bypass Devil Fruit powers. These 2 are accessible to every living thing in the world. Devil Fruit. I've faced 2 users before. They were extremely overconfident in their abilities. Zoro stated while resting his arm on one of the paddles. Most are unfortunately, but I'll tell you about Devil Fruit after I am finished with Haki. Last is Conquerors or Hashoku Haki. As you heard earlier, only 1 in around 5 million people are capable of this ability. It isn't attainable by training, but can be improved with the correct training. It is said, those with this form of Haki have the qualities to be a king or queen. I don't see how it can compare to observation or armament though, it just seems useful to knock out large numbers of weak opponents. Zoro declared, nearly losing interest and was about to start rowing again. I thought the same when I was learning all of this, but Conquerors can be applied to the other 2 forms. How so? This caught Zoro's attention again. When combined with observation, a user can pick out specific people to incapacitate. This can also significantly improve the distance users can intimidate people or things. When combined with armament, the Haki will be exponentially more powerful. It can even cause damage to the environment around you, which some people refer to as pressure. I see, I stand corrected. That sounds very valuable. So what about Devil Fruit? Alright, so Devil Fruit are some of the rarest treasures the sea has to offer. They are apparently incarnations of sea devils, and in return for their powers the devils take your ability to swim. That can't be true. Sea devils don't exist. Zoro replied while opening a bottle of sake with a pop. I don't know about any sea devils, but I know I can't swim anymore, Luffy spoke looking out onto the sea. Wait, you ate a devil fruit? What is it? Zoro asked, looking at Luffy in disbelief. The devil fruit I ate is among the rarest and most powerful in the entire world, a mythical zone. From what I've been told, only 2 other people in the entire world have a devil fruit like mine. Mythical Zone? What makes it so special? I'll show you. Luffy smiled, stood up in the dingy and announced, repentance. A golden halo consumed in white flames appeared over Luffy's head and he continued, this is my hybrid form. Then Luffy announced, the 9th circle. A blinding light then enveloped Luffy for a second. When the light faded, Zoro could finally see what made this devil fruit mythical. Luffy had what looked to be angel wings that were about 6 feet long each. He still had the golden halo which is above his head then overwhelmed with a raging white flame. It was so intense, the water around the dingy started to steam and Zoro started to sweat because of the absurd heat. This is my fully transformed form, Luffy declared before reverting back to his base form and sitting back down. I can manipulate and control a special kind of fire. I call it holy fire, and ever since I ate the fruit I haven't been burned by anything. So, I assume I'm immune to fire. Although on Dawn Island, I couldn't really test that theory. What is it called? Zoro asked Luffy, still in awe of his transformation. I've taken to calling it the Tenshi Tenshi no Mi. But if you were to classify the fruit, I guess it would be Hito Hito no Mi, model. Tenshi. Or something like that. I see, so what about the other devil fruits? Luffy then stated, generally, there are 3 main types of devil fruit. Zoan, Paramecia, and Loja. Paramecia, which are the most common, allow the user to alter their body, manipulate the environment, or even produce substances. Zones, which are also pretty common, they allow the user to transform into another species completely or into a hybrid form like I showed you earlier. Lojas are widely considered the rarest and most powerful devil fruit in the world. These fruits allow the user to control, create an element, or force of nature at will. However, what makes those devil fruits so powerful is the common trait that nearly every Loja has, intangibility. Which is where Armament Haki comes in. It is the only surefire way to beat Loja in a fight. Then when I fought those 2 users, one was a Paramecia and the other was a Zoan. What were their abilities? Luffy asked, intrigued by other users in the East Blue. This crazy woman could grow out her nails and make them into razor-sharp claws. I guess that was a paramecia, and his own user could turn into a massive bear. It would actually impressive if they weren't trying to kill me. Zoro answered with a grin. So, if there are 3 types, then how is your devil fruit considered mythical, other than the obvious? Well, zones are special. There are 3 subcategories on top of the type itself. From what Gramps told me, those are carnivorous, ancient, and mythical. Alright, I'm starting to get the picture. So, how do I learn armament? That seems to be extremely useful, especially for a swordsman, especially to fight these users effectively. The first thing you need is complete confidence in your strength and abilities. Then you need to put your will, fighting spirit, and all of your strength into a single body part. This will project the Haki. Projecting your armament Haki is called armament hardening, which is the black light paint that covered my pipe. But this takes time, training and practice to use efficiently. Alright, so what you're saying is I'm not ready, Zoro replied with a smirk. Yes, but you don't need to learn it yet. I doubt we will run into many users in this blue. But when we get to the Grand Line, it will become a priority. So, you said your grandfather taught you all this. Who is he? He must be powerful. Zoro asked before chugging some at his sake. His name is Monkey D. Garp, he is a vice admiral in the Marines. This caused Zoro to do a spit-take and cough for a few seconds. Your grandfather is Monkey D. Garp, the legendary hero of the Marines. I can see how you are so strong then. Zoro said before switching seats with Luffy. 2 days later, it was nearing midday, and both Luffy and Zoro were doing their own thing. Zoro was napping off his sake, while Luffy was eating some dried meat from the now moderately sized bag. Suddenly, Luffy noticed 30 or so auras slowly getting closer. Zoro, wake up. We are at Orange Town. Luffy said, slightly kicking Zoro's foot. I thought you said it would take 3 days. Zoro said, sitting up and rubbing the sleep out of his eyes. I thought we would hit a storm at least, but we have also had the wind in our sails nearly the entire time. So, we made a great time. Just get ready for a fight, we are going to steal their stash. Luffy replied while plotting the course for the next island, which just happened to be Syrup Village, where Yasopp said his son lives. As they got closer to the island, Luffy noticed it was completely abandoned. Which wasn't surprising considering pirates took over the island. When they landed on the island, Luffy wondered out loud, I wonder why they are using so many explosives. Are they just destroying to destroy? Zoro then looked at Luffy and asked, why don't we go ask them? I'm sure they have a reason. Then out of nowhere a woman being chased by 4 pirates came sprinting down the street. Get back here, bitch. The biggest and slowest of the pirates screamed. Seeing this, Luffy asked Zoro, should we help her? I don't know, she looks like she has it handled. I doubt those pirates will catch her. You're just lazy, she might give us a compensation or something for saving her. I doubt that too. Fine, you stay here. I'll be right back. Luffy said before vanishing into thin air, leaving an afterimage. Zoro watched the afterimage fade away before finding a shady spot beside a building and muttering, I really need to ask him how he does that. Luffy decided to step out of an alleyway in front of the woman, which caused her to trip and fall in surprise. Do you need some help? Luffy asked the woman, expecting a straight answer. By now the pirates had almost caught up and were pulling out their swords. Instead of the straight answer, she said, thank God, boss, I knew I would find you here. Here is your treasure map, I'll see you later. She gave Luffy a piece of paper from her shirt that had a clown Jolly Roger on it, a wink and smile before bolting down the alleyway Luffy emerged from. So, you're that bitch's boss, huh? Buggy the clown would like a word with you. The fat one said, while the others circled Luffy. Luffy decided to play along because why not, this might be entertaining. He announced, yeah, I'm her boss and she's not a bitch. If Buggy wants to talk, he'll have to come himself. I'm a busy man, so I'm sure he'd understand that I don't have time for bullshit. You fucking prick. The biggest pirate screamed, attacking the man in the straw hat, soon followed by the others. When Nami got onto the roof to watch the exchange, she expected to see the guy in the straw hat beaten and dragged off to Buggy's camp. Much to her surprise, the 4 pirates were already knocked out, but even more surprising, the guy in the straw hat was looking straight at her with a large grin plastered on his face. He then asked, hey, what's your name? A little hesitant to answer, Nami mustered up some courage and jumped down from the roof. She then replied, I'm Nami. Who are you? Me? My name is Monkey D. Luffy. Nice to meet ya. Luffy answered with his large smile. Only for his stomach to growl rather loudly. Ah, I'm hungry. Hey Nami, do you have any food? It's been a while since I ate. Luffy asked while holding his stomach and slouching a little. Caught a little off guard by this, Nami agreed and took Luffy to an abandoned house, one she was using as a base of sorts. As soon as the door was shut, Luffy was rummaging through the cabinets looking for something to eat. Finding this amusing, Nami pulled Luffy away from the kitchen and sat him at a table. After a few minutes, she came back a loaf of bread with some meats and cheeses. As soon as the platter was on the table, Luffy dug in. This is so good. Did you make this? Luffy asked Nami before shoving more meat into his mouth. No, I stole it from the pirates in this town. Their captain might have a large bounty, but the crew isn't very smart. Nami replied, still watching the slightly disturbing side of this man eating. Luffy finished the platter, then said, well, that's expected from a crew whose captain is a clown. Shishy. Luffy laughed, clearly amused with himself. I guess you're right, Luffy. I forgot to ask. Why are you in this town? It's clearly abandoned. Nami asked, interested in his answer. I'm here to steal from Buggy. Luffy replied with a blank face. At this, Nami smiled. This is a great opportunity, we could help each other. Luffy. What do you say? Maybe. How good are you at navigation? What does that have to do with this? Nami yelled at Luffy. I'm looking for Nakama and a navigator, but they have to be the best in the East Blue, only then can I get to the Grand Line. Luffy said with a determined smile on his face. I wouldn't say I'm the best, but if you help me, I'll join you for a while. Great. So what's your plan? Luffy asked, standing up from the table. How about this? Nami started before pulling out some rope. Half an hour later, Zoro shot up wide awake and yelled, what the fuck was that? Looking into the distance, he could see massive amounts of smoke rising above the rooftops. Shit, I have to find Luffy. Zoro thought before sprinting in the direction the sound came from. When Zoro found Luffy, he was locked in a steel cage, looking down the barrel of a massive cannon. Although Luffy most likely had the situation handled, Zoro was about to run in and attack the Buggy pirates. Until, he heard the conversation between Luffy and the woman from earlier, who just happened to be on the other side of the cannon. So, are you going to do it? Luffy asked in a calm voice. Do what? Kill you in cold blood? Nami replied, obviously conflicted. No, risk your life for what you believe in. That's what it means to be a pirate after all. After a few silent moments, Luffy looked to his right and noticed Zoro. Hey Zoro. I was wondering when you would wake up. Pirate hunter Zoro. Are you here for my head? Buggy asked with a grin on his face. Not interested, big nose, Zoro replied before looking at Luffy. Luffy, do you need some help? No, I'm fine. But I guess this is getting boring. Luffy declared before lying on his back and putting his feet on the top of the cage. With one fluid motion, the top of the cage shot off and hit the lion tamer in the face, causing everyone but Zoro to scream, you could do that the whole time. Luffy casually walked over to Zoro, who cut the rope restraining him and simply said, yep. Luffy then turned to Zoro and proposed, Zoro, do you think you can handle the fodder? When I beat Buggy, I'll help out with the rest. Sure, that'll be a good workout, but what about the woman? Nami? She's our new navigator. Luffy responded with a broad smile. I see, Zoro said, walking towards Nami and the underlings of Buggy. So, you are part of the crew now? Zoro asked. It's only temporary, it's compensation for saving me earlier. Nami replied, still looking confused by what just happened. Alright, whatever you say, Zoro replied before unsheathing his katana. So, are you going to help or just stand there? If you think one flashy swordsman and a thief can beat my entire crew, you are as stupid as you look, Straw Hat. Buggy declared while pointing at Luffy. Luffy then replied, says the clown who ate his devil fruit whole. This caused Buggy to pale. Yeah, I know who you are, Buggy, and I also know whose crew you were on more than 20 years ago. You've fallen so far since his death, it's as pathetic as your crew. Only then did Buggy recognize the Straw Hat, and it all clicked. Jayahahaha, it doesn't matter if you know my past, because today I will destroy that Straw Hat and kill you. Buggy announced with a grin. Buggy then pulled out 8 knives and leaped at Luffy. Only to be stopped by a kick to the face, hurling him into his cannon. Walking over to the now junk metal that used to be a cannon, Luffy wanted one last look at the failed pirate to be this weak and to have been around Roger himself. You should just quit, it's obvious you weren't cut out for this. Luffy spoke quietly to the fading man. I can still fight. The clown said, on the verge of unconsciousness. I have one last question before I put you in a coma. Where is my pipe? Luffy asked the man, only to get an answer in the form of action. Buggy was pointing to his tent, in which Luffy could clearly see the pipe inside. Thanks. Luffy ended it with a curb stomp to the back of the head, finishing off Buggy. Looking back to Zoro and Nami, Luffy watched as Zoro easily handled a swordsman on a unicycle. Nami was somehow able to pacify the lion, whose tamer was unconscious. She was doing surprisingly well against the rest of the crew with only her pole, which she seems to be capable with. Though Zoro had to save her at least once, from what Luffy saw before jogging to the tent and grabbing his pipe. When Luffy came out of the tent, the only pirates left were running for their lives in fear of the man in the green bandana. Luffy then said, Zoro, that's enough. Let him go, they aren't a threat anymore. Alright, let's steal all of their berries, and from what I can tell, there is around 20 million in the tent alone. This caused Nami's eyes to change into berry signs. On the way back to Nami's boat, the three were stopped by an old man who asked, what are you kids doing here? Don't you know the Buggy pirates have taken over? Luffy replied, yep, we know. They just aren't a problem anymore. The old man stared at the three with wide eyes, then asked, what do you mean, not a problem anymore? They are all unconscious, so I recommend you call the Marines and cash the bounties on their heads. It should be enough for repairs for the town and more. This left the old man speechless, before turning around and running as fast as he could back into the woods. What a strange old man, Nami thought out loud. So, Luffy, where are we going next? Do you know where Syrup Village is? Luffy asked while loading the gold onto the small boat. I do, but it's on a small island with nothing else on it. Why are we heading there? Luffy looked across the East Blue and with excitement in his voice, he answered, our next Nakama is there. Who is our next Nakama? Zoro asked while cleaning Wado Ichimonji. His name is Usopp, the son of Yasopp, the legendary marksman of the red-haired pirates, Luffy replied, laying on the deck with his straw hat covering his face. How is he alive? His father must have a massive bounty, and to be a part of a Yonko's crew, Nami questioned before sitting down in front of the cabin. I doubt anyone other than us, the red hair pirates, or the island's inhabitants, even know about him or his family. So I'm sure he's had a pretty quiet life. Luffy said through his straw hat. What makes you think he'll join us? Zoro wondered, never taking his eyes off his katana. As Nami said yesterday, the island is small and only has a single village. I bet he is itching to leave and see what the world has to offer. Luffy assumed. He then lifted the straw hat off his face before asking, Zoro, you said Buggy had the second highest bounty in the East Blue, who has the largest? If nothing has changed lately, then it's Arlong of the Arlong Pirates. With a 30 million berry bounty, he's arguably the strongest person in this blue. Not to mention he's a fishman. I heard he's strong even for a fishman. Apparently, he's been operating out of the Konomi Islands for years. Zoro informed him, still completely engrossed with his katanas. Vacuous of that, only Luffy noticed Nami flinch at the name, and judging by the fish tattoo she hides, she has a history with him. With observation, Luffy could feel her entire aura shift from peace and contentment to hatred and disgust. He could only imagine what she's gone through or what trauma she experiences every day because of him. I see, Luffy responded, trying to think of a good reason to sail to the Konomi Islands. After a few minutes, Zoro finished meticulously cleaning and maintaining each of his katana and asked, Luffy, how do you vanish and leave an afterimage? Oh, that. It's called shave, one of the 6 Rocky Shiki techniques that make someone superhuman. It allows someone to move at incredibly high speeds and to even attack with greater power because of it. To use this technique, someone must kick off the ground more than 10 times in a blink. However, for most people I doubt mastering the technique is possible. Luffy informed them while getting up to stretch. Why is that? Nami asked as her aura shifted to curiosity because of these superhuman techniques. Tunnel vision. Most people just can't adjust to the speed and lose focus on where they are going completely. Luffy stated while popping his back. And what about the other 5 techniques? Do you use them too? Zoro asked, also intrigued. No, I only mastered 3 of the 6. I didn't think the others were very beneficial. So, what are the other 2 you can use? Nami questioned. I can use Moon Step, which is essentially jumping on air and paper drawing. Which is the art of making your body so limp that you are basically paper in the wind. Although the last one is strange because it also requires having complete control of your body and its functions. The FFF, no way you can jump on air, that's physically impossible. Nami declared, shaking her head with a smirk on her face. Zoro looked at her with a raised eyebrow, while Luffy just chuckled a bit. He then stood up on the railing and with a leaped out of the dingy. At the apex of his leap, Luffy thrust his foot down like he was taking another step and he suddenly levitated higher while making a slight depression in the water. He then turned while continuing the technique and looked at Nami, only to see an astonished look on her face. This is called moonwalking, and it can also be combined with shave, Luffy said before stepping back onto the dingy. Although, it makes me really hungry. Shushi. Let me guess, next you are going to tell me you have a devil fruit or you can breathe while underwater. Nami replied sarcastically. Zoro looked at Luffy for a moment before snickering at this comment. Luffy walked to the boat while looking at the tiny island in the distance. He then asked, Nami, is that Gecko Island is? Yep, that's Gecko Island. I just hope this guy will join. She then said under her breath, I don't want this to be for nothing. Ah, it's a beautiful day. There is no better way to start the day than by looking out onto the sea. Usopp declared before looking towards his mother's grave, then turning around and running back to Syrup Village, screaming about an incoming pirate attack. Well, Usopp's up and about. That means it's time to get to work. Old Man Morton, the mayor of Syrup Village, spoke while finishing his breakfast and reading the paper. There he goes again, one of these days the townspeople will kill that boy. Mark my words, the older man said to his wife. Stop it, you know about his mother and father. So be nicer to the boy, he has a hard enough life as is. She stated after smacking her husband on the back of the head. He doesn't make it easier for himself, he does this every single day. The older man replied while rubbing the back of his head and drinking the rest of his coffee. Yusuf ran through the entire village before turning around and screaming with a grin on his face, "Just kidding, mwahaha." This only angered the villagers, causing some to throw things at him. Yusuf started to run into the woods on the northern part of the island, avoiding pots and pans along the way. When he got far enough into the woods, Yusuf climbed the highest tree he could find. It had an amazing view of the East Blue, but to his surprise, a ship was almost to the island, and it had black sails and a Jolly Roger with a big red nose. Climbing down the tree, Yusuf ran as fast as he could back to the village. He had heard of the story The Boy Who Cried Wolf, and he understood how the villagers viewed him. So, instead of saying anything to them, Yusuf went off to find his crew. "Ninjan, Pillman, Tamanegi, where are you guys? We have to get to the north coast fast." Yusuf yelled, running as fast as he could. The three came out of the sliding out of Meshi, and with salutes and smiles, they all asked, "What's wrong, Captain?" "We have to go to the north coast as fast as we can," Yusuf said, before taking off towards the north. The three children struggled to keep up with Yusuf, but as they neared the coast, Pillman screamed, "Captain! What's wrong? Why are we running to the coast? Buggy the Clown's pirate ship is coming. We have to keep Kaya and the village safe," Yusuf yelled without looking back. As the three neared Gecko Island, Luffy already noticed the four auras hiding in the woods of the northern coast. When Luffy, Zoro, and Nami landed on the island, Luffy and Nami jumped from the small boat, while Zoro begrudgingly pulled it ashore. "Syrup Village is south of here, hopefully, this Yusuf is there," Nami said, looking at a map of the surrounding area. "I don't think Yasop would lie about his son. He may have told some tall tales when he was on Dawn Island, but I believe him. Shanks knows when he's lying and he believed him, so why shouldn't we?" Luffy responded to Nami while watching the woods on the cliff. Then some kid jumped out of the tree line while holding a slingshot like he was about to attack and yelled, "How do you know my dad's name?" With a closer look, the kid with a long nose and an afro. He was also wearing coveralls and a brown bandana. Luffy smiled and answered, "You must be Yusuf. I met Yasop more than a decade ago on Dawn Island, and he just wouldn't stop talking about you. He also said you take after him in more ways than one. So, I just had to come to meet the son of a legendary marksman. Then you are not part of the Buggy Pirates?" Yusuf asked, still aiming his slingshot at Luffy. Shishi, no, we are not part of the Buggy Pirates. My name is Monkey D. Luffy, this is Nami, and that is Rorano's Oro, we're the Straw Hat Pirates. Do you know where we can get some meat? We have money and I'm starving," Luffy asked with a smile. "Alright, but if you start any trouble, I'll drive you off this island," Yusuf declared, pulling the rubber band on his slingshot further back to emphasize his point. Luffy held his hands up in mock surrender, "Don't worry, we won't start anything. So, is there a restaurant or something nearby? I can also tell you stories of Yasop while he was on Dawn Island." "Alright, just follow the path and I'll meet you at the top of the hill," Yusuf stated before disappearing back into the brush. Nami then looked at Luffy and said, "That was easier than expected." While walking towards the path, Luffy and Zoro walked together up the path, but before they reached the trees, Luffy said under his breath, "We should be careful on this island, I can sense a malicious aura inland. Keep an eye out, but I'll tell you when we see him." "Are you sure? This island seems peaceful," Zoro asked, stopping dead in his tracks and looking Luffy in the eyes. "I am, the aura is malicious but controlled. It's also the biggest aura besides us too, so just look for ill intent." Luffy spoke with a serious look. "Okay, do you think I could beat him?" Zoro asked with a grin as they continued up the path. "Of course, Zoro. I have the utmost confidence in your skills and abilities. I sincerely doubt there is anyone in this blue could beat you in a straight fight. Then why are you worried?" "I'm not worried about us, Zoro, I'm worried about the people of this island," Luffy replied, only to see Nami waiting beside Yusuf and three other kids. Luffy then looked at Yusuf and asked, "Alright, where are we going?" Only for his stomach growl. We are heading back to town. There is a restaurant called Mushy we can eat at." With that, Yusuf led on, heading south towards the village. As Yusuf walked next to Luffy, he asked, "So you really knew my father, Yasop?" "Yeah, I know him, he's the best marksman I've ever seen. I never saw him miss a shot. He loved to tell tall tales, which I thought were lies, but he talked more about you and your mother than himself," Luffy answered while reminiscing about a time long past. "I didn't know him very well, he left to become a pirate when I was young. So, I don't remember much about him," Yusuf stated, looking dejected. After 20 minutes or so of walking, the three kids left and the four of them arrived at Mushy, all the while receiving stares or glares from the passing villagers. When they sat down at a booth, Luffy asked, "Yusuf, what is your dream?" "My dream? Why do you ask?" Yusuf inquired, looking a tad confused. "Well, my entire crew are crazy dreamers. I'm the craziest of them all, after all I want to find the One Piece, and we need a marksman. So, would you like to join us? A marksman, you say? Well, my dream is to become the greatest marksman in the world. I can guarantee you, there isn't a better one in the East Blue. But I'll only do it if I get the captain position. Usopp responded with a grin on his face and puffing out his chest. Zoro, not looking amused at all, declared, we are the Straw Hat Pirates. There is only one person fit for the job, and he is sitting right in front of me. He then pointed his finger at Luffy, who was devouring some meat before chugging some sake. Usopp started to backpedal. Fine, I'm alright with not being the captain, but I will be the first mate. Luffy then cleared his throat and declared, Zoro was the first person in my crew, so that spot is taken. How about this, you can be our weapons expert and our prodigious marksman. Nami then added, Luffy, I think you've forgotten something. Luffy tilted his head a bit in confusion, then Nami continued, about how we will get to the Grand Line. We can't take that dingy, it will get torn apart. I think I can help with that, Usopp interjected. There is a mansion on this island, and the girl who owns it has a ship. She's the richest person on the entire island, sadly she is sickly and bedridden right now, but you are in luck because I'm her only friend. Usopp announced, sticking his thumb in his chest. Why does a girl like that own a mansion? Nami inquired. Both of her parents died last year because of a strange illness. It was very sudden, but she was left everything, the mansion, the fortune, the servants. It's a tragic story if I've ever heard one. Usopp replied, leaning back in his chair. Luffy looked over to Zoro, who was already staring at him, and with a slight nod, Luffy said, well, let's go meet her, I'm sure she will help us. Luffy hung back, while Usopp led them up the road towards the massive white house. Zoro then looked at Luffy and inquired in a hushed tone, so, what do you think about that illness? It seems suspicious to me. I agree. If I had to guess, the one who did it is someone who prepares food or is around them at all times. Luffy said, looking ahead towards the mansion. Are we getting closer to that aura you were talking about? Zoro asked. Luffy nodded then said, we are, but the aura is moving throughout the mansion, so I assume it is a butler or maid. I'll let you know when we met the person. Although, he said it loud enough to garner some attention. Nami then slowed down and asked, what are you two talking about? We are almost at the mansion, you know. Nami, what do you think about the illness that has affected this family? Luffy inquired. I think it's tragic and strange, but possible. Why do you ask? I'll answer your question with another. Luffy turning grim, and he then looked at Usopp's back and asked, hey Usopp, how old were the parents when they died? They seemed to be in their late 30s or early 40s. Why do you ask? I was just curious, they seemed very young to die of illness, Luffy replied before turning back to Nami. They were, that's why it was so tragic. When you meet her, please don't bring it up, it will make her depressed. Usopp stated before continuing on the path. Nami gave Luffy a calculating glance before muttering, alright, I think I get what you are saying, but why are you so on edge? Luffy then lowered his voice, think about it like this, Nami, not only did this girl's parents, both of whom were adults, die of the same illness at the same time, but now, a year later, their child is dying of an illness. Not only that, but no other person has contracted this illness on the island, other than members of the most wealthy family. You make it sound like someone is killing off the family, Nami spoke in a hushed tone. Zoro stated, that's exactly what he's saying. But Nami started, before being cut off by Luffy. We will continue this later. Right now, we need to see if this girl is truly sick. The four walked for another 5 minutes before coming upon a large black gate. Usopp then led them to the side of the estate and climbed the wall before looking back to Luffy and saying, stay here for a few minutes, I'll talk to her and cheer her up a little. Usopp then jumped down from the wall and walked to a window on the first floor and knocked. Luffy, what other proof do you have that someone is trying to kill the family? Nami asked a little hesitantly. I should have told you this on the way here, along with the techniques I showed both of you. I have the ability to sense auras, feelings, strength, and intentions. This ability is called Observation Haki. This is important because the largest aura on the island is in that mansion. Not only is it the most powerful aura besides Zoro and me, but it's extremely malicious. So much so that it is like a beacon. Luffy answered while looking at the top floors of the mansion. Did Zoro know this? Is there anything else that I should know? Nami demanded with her hands on her hips. Yes, Zoro knew about it. I will tell you everything later when we have more time, for now though, we should secure our ship for the Grand Line. Luffy declared before turning away from Nami. So, we are just going to leave this girl to die. I thought you were a better person than that. Nami replied, raising her voice. SHHHH, Nami, calm down. Besides, what do you expect me to do? Run in there and beat the shit out of the person who is doing this? Nami, if I do that, it will only be seen as a pirate hurting an innocent, and we will lose a chance to get to the Grand Line. I expect you to do something. I won't follow a man who doesn't help those who need it. If it means we get our ship in exchange for her life, we'll find a ship somewhere else. Alright, we will help the girl. I will try and force the person's hand but hey, guys. She wants to meet you. Come on over. Usopp yelled over the wall. Nami gave Luffy a glare, then hopped up and over the wall. Luffy then said under his breath, shit, this is going to be tricky. Zoro then simply replied before jumping over the wall, we can just kill him after we get our ship. Luffy then jumped over the wall and was greeted by a pale blonde girl leaning halfway out a window. She then started, my name is Kaya, I hear you are friends of Usopp. He also told me you have a request. Luffy then explained, we do Kaya, my name is Monkey D. Luffy, the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. We need a ship to get us to the Grand Line. If you can help us, it will not only benefit my crew, but Usopp as well. She then looked at Usopp and asked, how will this help you? Usopp responded with a smile, I am going with them, Kaya. I'm going to the Grand Line to accomplish my dream of being the greatest marksman in the world. He finished with his fist in the air, then continued with less enthusiasm, there is also a chance I can meet my father again. Kaya then announced, alright, I will have a ship prepared for you all. She then turned to Usopp, and when you return Usopp, I will hear all of your stories about the infamous Grand Line. Kaya declared with a big grin. Kaya, I have another question. Luffy said, regaining her attention. What is it, Luffy? Kaya asked, tilting her head. When was the last time you left this mansion? He inquired, motioning to the building. It's been about 5 months since I last left my caretaker. Clahater says it unhealthy for me to leave. Kaya said as her mood immediately changed. Would you like to go to town with us? I'm sure the people there would love, Luffy said before being cut off by a man with glasses. What are you doing here? You can't just barge in, this is private property. The man spoke with an edge while walking up to the group. Calm down, Clahater, it's alright, they only wanted. Kaya started before being cut off by the man. I don't care what they wanted, I will hear of it afterward. Now all of you leave the property or I will force you out. The man said, pushing his glasses up in a very strange way. Luffy said, Zoro, I got it, the swordsman said before putting his hand on Wado Ichimonji. Luffy then looked to Kaya, who looked unhappy and asked, Kaya, you pay this man, correct? Her expression changed to confusion and replied, yes, I pay his wage. Why do you ask? Then he has no right to order you around, let's go into town. I'm sure there are people you would like to see. I'd love. Kaya started before being cut off by the butler. No. Mistress Kaya, you can't, you are still very sick. You must stay inside. Clahater told her, now sounding desperate. You look fine to me, Kaya, and besides, Luffy started sending an intense glare towards Clahater before looking back towards Kaya. It is unhealthy to stay inside for even a month, let alone 5. Everyone needs the sun, Kaya, it is healthy to be outside as well. Clahater then stepped in between Kaya and Luffy and nearly screamed, no. She is still sick. Before calming down and continuing, just look at her, she is so pale and frail. She needs to stay inside. Clahater said, emphasizing every word while trying to intimidate Luffy. Shishishi, I can tell you are not a doctor. Luffy laughed at him while giving him a small dose of Conqueror's Haki, causing him to step back in fear while sweating bullets. Luffy then declared, she is that pale because she never leaves the house, and her frailty can also be attributed to that. Luffy then pushed past Clahater and asked, so, Kaya, would you like to go into town with us? I'd love to, Luffy, Kaya said, putting on her shoes before slipping out the window. She then grabbed Usopp's arm before looking at the butler and ordering, Clahater, tell Mary to get the Going Merry ready immediately. And began walking towards the gate being led by Usopp. Clahater then moved so fast that only Luffy could see him. He grabbed Kaya by the arm and said, Mistress, I insist that you return to the house immediately. Luffy then walked up to the man and grabbed his shoulder, giving him a bone-crushing squeeze, and said in his ear, I recommend you let go of her, or you lose the arm. As Clahater let go, Luffy said to Usopp and Nami, go on ahead, Zoro, and I need to get something from the Dingy. We'll meet you at Meshi in an hour or so. Nami picked up on what was happening and herded the two out off the property, while giving Clahater an icy glare. Nami then asked with a sweet smile, so, Kaya, where do you want to go? Today's all about you. Kaya thought for a moment before saying, I'd like to go see Usopp's mother's grave, it is on the southern coast of the island, then I'd like to see old man Martin again. He is always so nice and I haven't seen him in so long. Usopp was stunned by her request for a moment before giving her a warm smile and saying, let's go to the coast first, then we can go see the mayor. Luffy threw Clahater into the side of the mansion while he was holding his fractured shoulder and said, so, you are the one who killed Kaya's parents. What are you talking about? I treated them the best I could. Clahater answered, trying to sound innocent. You must think I'm stupid, not only did you use shave just now, which no normal person can use, but you have hardly covered your tracks at all when killing this family, Luffy said, trying to keep a level voice. He then grabbed the man by the arm and dragged him to the front door before throwing him up the steps into the door. Go get your weapons, we will be out back, and if you try to leave in any way, I will kill you myself. no matter who sees. Luffy ordered while lacing the last part with Conqueror's Haki. As they were walking to the back of the property, Zoro questioned, "So, do you think he will run? If he is smart, he won't. I'm going to let him fight you, which gives him a slight chance of survival. And if he attacks you? If he does that, then I will finish this quickly. I'm not in a great mood at the moment, so he will be an excellent disposable punching bag," Luffy declared, giving Zoro a toothy grin. Not even 5 minutes later, the back door of the mansion opened and Clahater appeared before both of them. He had taken off his blazer and put on strange gloves with blades on each finger. "I actually expected my plan to work flawlessly, but it seems I've lost my touch. I will start with the one who broke my shoulder," he said, pointing a hand at Luffy, "then I will take care of you, Rurano Zoro. I have one question before we start, what is your real name?" Luffy asked. "I guess you would like to know who is about to kill you, child. My name is Kuro of 100 Plans, captain of the Black Cat Pirates." "Oh, you are Kuro? The pirate with a 16 million berry bounty? I thought you were caught by the Marines 3 years ago." Zoro responded with a grin and crossing his arms. "As if I could ever be caught. I am the smartest man in this backwater sea, and if it wasn't for you two, my 3-year plan would be nearly complete." He then pushed up his glasses with his palm. "But enough talk, I need to think of a good excuse for your disappearance," Kuro said before staggering back and forth with his head and arms hanging. Luffy looked away for a second, noticing a ship of pirates coming to the northern coast. He pulled out his pipe and vanished, barely kicking up some dirt and dust where he stood. He then appeared behind Kuro and hit the side of his knee with the pipe, hearing some loud cracks and pops as it happened. Kuro's knee was jutting out at a disturbing angle, causing him to fall to the ground, and when he saw it, started to wail and scream. Kuro then gripped his knee, only to cut himself with his blades and make his screams louder. Luffy then told his swordsman, "Zoro, I'm taking him to the northern coast. Head there too, it seems some pirates are about to arrive." He then grabbed Kuro by the shirt and used shave to get to the northern coast. Arriving 10 seconds later at the top of the cliff, Luffy spoke to the crying Kuro, "I assume your crew is on the way." Kuro looked at him with his bloodshot eyes full of fear, barely able to mumble the word, "How? When I throw you, be sure to fight the sleepy feeling you will get. Because you will probably to go into shock soon, and if you die, you'll become worthless to me." Luffy then threw Kuro down onto the beach, causing him to cry out in pain, and sat on a boulder waiting for Zoro and the pirates. 5 minutes later, Zoro came sprinting through the forest. Following which direction Luffy went in, he finally found him sitting on a boulder looking over the coast. "So, are the pirates here yet?" Zoro asked, moving closer to the edge of the cliff, only to see a motionless Kuro. "They will be soon," Luffy answered while watching the side of the coast. Zoro looked down on Kuro again and questioned, "Did you kill him?" "No, he just passed out due to shock and a decrease of blood pressure. But if his crew takes too long, he will succumb to the wounds." "A shame really, he must have been extremely out of shape to almost die because of a single hit." "How strong is the crew?" "There were only 15 members, but only 4 of them could be considered a threat." "You want to handle them?" "Of course. I was itching to fight that bastard, but his crew will have to do," Zoro told Luffy before spitting in Kuro's direction. "Then I'll watch from here. Just remember to be careful, not every battle is a sure victory." Luffy responded to Zoro as he walked to the path leading down to the beach. I know, I won't take chances. Besides, if we play with them for too long, we'll be late," Zoro replied, looking back to Luffy while putting on his bandana. "Nami, what were Luffy and Zoro getting from your boat?" Kaya asked as they walked back from the southern coast of the island. "They were getting our money," she quickly replied, having already thought of the excuse. "I see." Kaya spoke before looking into the cloudless sky and remarking, "Oh, it is such a gorgeous day, I wish I could be outside more." "Why don't you? You seem healthy to me, and besides, you made everyone happy when we entered town earlier," Nami said with a smile. "But Clahater says I'm sick and he has been such a good caretaker for me," Kaya responded while looking slightly sad. Nami then asked Kaya, "Is Clahater a doctor?" Kaya shook her head, "No, he is not." "Then you have nothing to worry about. What does he know about a woman's needs?" Nami stated, giving Kaya a grin. "You're right, Nami, he is a man after all." She then turned to Usopp, "Are you excited to leave the island and see the world?" I'm excited to see what the Grand Line has to offer. I've always heard it exceeds the imagination. I'm sure you will experience things that seem impossible, but also incredible. I envy you for having the strength to follow your dream, no matter how difficult the road might be. I know that you will have accomplished your dream during your time away, but know I'll have done the same. When you return, I will be the best doctor this blue has to offer." Just as Kaya finished her speech, Mayor Morden walked into the group with open arms. Kaya accepted the hug, and Morden asked, "Kaya, it's great to see you. Are you feeling well?" "I feel much better, it's great to get out of that stuffy old house and walk around the island again," Kaya responded with a beaming smile on her face. Well, I hope to see you more, everyone seems much happier when you're around. Morden said before looking toward Usopp. Ah, Usopp, I have been looking for you. Some of the villagers said that some pirates showed up earlier today, and you were with them. Can you explain what's going on? Usopp started to laugh timidly before explaining, I am going to join them, the captain knows my father personally and wants me to be their marksman. He also said he would help me achieve my dream, so I accepted their offer. Are you going to be staying in the East Blue? Morden asked with interest. No, we will be going to the Grand Line. My captain's dream is to find the One Piece after all, so we will be leaving after we get our ship. Morden looked at Usopp with surprise before ordering him, follow me Usopp, there is something I need to give you. Nami then declared, this seems private, so I'm going back to Meshi, just head back when you're done. Aya gave Nami a wave as the mayor led the two back to his home and into his dining room. He removed an ornate wooden box from beside his fireplace and stated, this was given to me by your mother before her health declined. She told me if you ever followed in your father's footsteps, to give you this and to tell you, those have been passed down for generations on your father's side, and he always wanted you to have them. I have never opened the box because it wasn't my business, but I bet it will help you on your journey. When Usopp opened the box, he found two customized .44 caliber flintlock revolvers. They're incredible. Usopp declared, completely in awe before grabbing one of the revolvers and noticing it fit his hand perfectly. Usopp then looked to Morden, who had tears in his eyes and a smile on his face. I remember when your father used those, he stopped after you were born, I just wish your mother was here to see this. Morden said, before wiping the tears. Thank you, I don't know how to repay you, just make your dream come true and come back one day. That will be more than enough. He declared with a gentle smile. When Nami entered Meshi, Luffy and Zoro were already there eating and drinking. Taking the booth opposite of them she asked, so, what happened to Clahater? Luffy then explained all too casually, his real name was Kuro and he was a pirate captain from a few years back, I unintentionally killed him and Zoro killed most of his crew. Where are Usopp and Kaya? I thought they were with you. Zoro inquired before taking a pull of sake. Usopp is talking to the mayor about something and Kaya went with him. I'm sure they will be here soon. Great. I can't wait to hear about our new ship, the Going Merry was the name, right? Zoro asked Nami. Yep, the Going Merry. I actually like the name, I wonder what type of ship it is. Luffy wondered. A few minutes later, Usopp and Kaya came into Meshi and Usopp was holding a wooden box. Luffy, being the most curious of the three asked, what's in the box, Usopp? My father left me these years ago, for the slim chance I follow in his footsteps, Usopp said putting the box on the table and opening it. When Luffy looked inside, he found two antique enhanced revolvers with what looked to be sea-washed oak driftwood for the grips. Both revolvers were resting on at least 50 bullets that were neatly stacked. Kaya then stated, they are beautiful, aren't they? It's like they were made for him. Zoro then asked, what about your slingshot? Usopp closed the box and simply responded with a small smile, I left it with the mayor. So, I will be using these on our journey. I'm sure you are excited to use them. Luffy then looked to Kaya, who was sitting next to Nami, so, can you tell us more about the Going Merry, we're all excited to see it. He said motioning to Zoro and Nami. I can, the Going Merry is a Caravel-class vessel. It was designed by my head butler, Mary, and its figurehead is of a lamb. The vessel has a central steering rudder and a jib. It also has 4 cannons, one on the bow, stern, port, and starboard sides of the ship. There is a kitchen, a bathroom, men's and women's quarters, as well as a storage and cannons deck. Oh, and I almost forgot, on the cannon deck, there is the anchor room. It sounds perfect. Luffy told Kaya with a massive smile, slamming his hands on the table. Nami then stated, I've heard of the Caravel class, the ships are supposed to be extremely maneuverable, correct? Yes, it is. I think it'll be perfect for whatever the Grand Line can throw at you. When can we see it? Zoro asked Kaya. Most likely tomorrow. I want to have it stocked with ammunition, food, and medical supplies among other things. Luffy had a look of realization that told the group, that reminds me, we need to find a cook. Sooner rather than later. Zoro chimed in, I agree, I doubt any of us can prepare food well. I have an idea, Kaya announced, gaining the attention of everyone at the table. There is a restaurant on the sea, called Liberating. I also heard the chefs there are all capable fighters, so maybe you can look for someone there. Do you know where it is? Nami inquired. No, the restaurant is a ship. So, it is moved regularly. Nami put her head down on the table, looking depressed. How are we supposed to find it then? It could be anywhere. Luffy looked at her with a bright smile and told her, don't worry Nami, I'm sure we will find it one way or another. Aya then got up and announced, thank you all for convincing me to come out today. I feel incredible. I'm going back home to see if the preparations are coming along well, and tomorrow I will meet all of you on the southern coast of the island. With a final smile towards Usopp, she left Meshi. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support Athejakud for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.